Because I have my CDL, I'm a coach, and I have to drive a bunch. I get to talk to the transportation director a lot. He's not, I won't call him a buddy of mine, but like we chat routinely, even if I see him outside of school. Um, I'm also pretty good. Kind of a mentor of mine is the security. I think he's the chief security officer. He's not an assistant superintendent, but he's kind of an assistant to superintendent. He was an assistant principal of mine when I first got, or the second year I got hired, but I knew him when he was coaching. So it's kind of like a nice network of people that I can rely on that work here now. So the two questions to start when talk about transportation, it says, what are the state and district requirements? The ultimate state requirement is that you provide transportation safely to and from the school. And the district sends out a survey every year, and we ask parents, are you planning on having your children ride the bus? We understand that not all of our kids are going to ride the bus. It does not happen. At the high school level, a good portion of the kids have cars. In the elementary level, if you live close enough, lots of kids ride their bikes. Many kids walk. There's a plethora of things. However, the district has to have a policy in place that says, ah, we can find a way to get every single kid to school and home from school safely at these drop off points. What's interesting for us is the school related in the school I say the school related things too. We recently are about to purchase two auxiliary buses that do nothing but travel athletes and like extracurricular kids to and from different events, which is really, really cool. They're basically built-in charter buses that have Gregory Portland on the side of them, and they're huge. They're meant to house all the equipment and stuff underneath them, and you have like phone chargers and stuff. Lots of that's going on. So some of that stuff's going to change. We're going to have specific drivers just for those. So like that's not necessarily state or obviously state or locally required, but it's something that we're going to do that's going to be a little above and beyond. To be a bus driver though has changed. So 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, 5 years ago, forgive me, my timeline's getting blurred. It used to be that you took what was called your air brakes test and general knowledge test, and then you had to take a simple uh, checklist, driving checklist. So you had to do that. You had to prove that you knew what the air brakes were, and you had to know what like you had to have an endorsement test. So there were three written tests that you had to take, all of which were pretty simple. And then you had to go do a pre-trip inspection at your local DMV. The pre-trip took about 25 minutes, and then you'd go on a driving test. It's really what you do. You'd show the bus driver, you show the people at the DMV, you knew where the lights were, you knew what the stops were, you knew what the laws were, and you knew, particularly at the railroad crossings. That's something that people don't really understand. There is a checklist that you have to do at every single railroad crossing, and that can be kind of a pain. Um, Stop the bus, pull the air brake, put it in neutral. Flashing lights have to be on, and the doors and windows on the driver's side have to be open so you can hear a train coming. It's kind of a long list of things. Those are required. Now it's changed a little bit. So there are five tests now. So you still have your air brakes, you still have your standard test or your general knowledge test, which actually includes a lot more than people think it does. It's not just general knowledge of a school bus, like that they're all like 36. Well, they're not all 36 feet, but they're all roughly 36 feet. They're all large tandem axles. They all have air brakes. It's like that stuff's not necessarily the important part. But they ask you about trailers, different ratchet binders, and mechanical things. If you have some mechanical aptitude, it's fine, but otherwise, not the end of the world. Um, then there's you have to now do the para, it's not, I don't want to call it special education, but like passengers in a wheelchair. What do you do? There's a chemical hazard side to it now. Like what do you do for different fluids and like how those things. You have to take that test now. Uh, and then the pre-trip check is much more encompassing. You have to know exactly how to test the air brakes, which is not difficult but takes some time. And then you have to be able to point out everything that you should be looking for on a bus like prior to driving. if you're given 45 minutes to do the pre-trip, and if you do it correctly, it'll take you 40, and it's a lengthy process. So like it's not like an easy process anymore. Um, Additionally, you have to take a 20-hour safety course when you initially get your bus driving license, and you have to do an 8-hour refresher course every 3 years to maintain it. So part two, safety. This is a unique thing for us. So we have a weird district setup now. So we were a very small town. Well, two towns. So Gregory, Portland, two towns right side by side, one school district. And we used to not have, like, industry was in Corpus Christi. It was across the bay. Like, we knew it was there, but you didn't really have to deal with it. There was very rarely anything, like, it was something that we kind of thought of in an abstract concept. There's some industry down the road a little bit in Ingleside and Aransas Pass, but again, about the same distance. So we didn't really think about it. But now it's literally in our backyard. Like, it's in between the two towns and right across. And it's something that we now have to deal with every single day. So when we brought up safety, the first thing we had to think of, so discuss responsibilities of the building administrator to ensuring a safe and secure environment for the students. As it's so this is sort of an interesting deal. So our crisis plan, I'll deal with the crisis plans. I think they merge. Our crisis plan was like 28 pages, and it's not. And we have like a book that we give out to all of the teachers that's color coded. It's like, I want to say there's 12 different colors, and it's all these different responses to all these different things. And we have to drill them now all the time. So it's like your standard is your active shooter. So it's your lockdown drill. It's your lockout drill. It's your shelter in place drill. We have a chemical hazard drill that we have to do. And of course, your standard fire and things along those natures. Tornado, which down here we don't have to worry about too much. But I'd like to point out, because I brought up the industry, the chemical one is particularly interesting. So when I was researching this, I spoke to both those men that I brought up previously. And I asked, what happens if, as a principal, you're teaching people. So what do I tell bus drivers, or what do I tell anybody for that matter? If you're on a school bus and a crisis occurs, what do you do? And the first thing they said was, well, there's two automatic places that buses have to go. The first is the junior high parking lot, which for us is like literally the largest parking lot in the district. I don't know why it is, but it is huge parking lot. It's like 3 football fields, if not bigger. It does not ever have that many people in it, but it's huge. Um, and so that's where the buses are told to go, assuming that the junior high or the high school are safe because they're across the street from one another. If that is not the case, then they are told to go immediately to the furthest possible elementary campus, which our elementaries are all scattered throughout the town, like on the outskirts of the town, with the exception of one that's literally dead center. But they were told to go to one of those. I found that to be interesting. And I said, what happens if it's a chemical hazard and that it might be better, like let's say the Exxon plant that's literally just been built. What do you do if that thing becomes this combustible fireball? What do you do? It's spewing hydrocarbons into the air. But people are on a bus. And he said, we tell them to drive. You don't want to park near that. If we can get the students away from that, that's what you should do. I found that to be interesting. When discussing specifically building safety and sort of the responsibility of the principal and the teachers within the building, he spoke specifically about the lockdown. And he said it's the principal's job to initiate it. We have in our school a master, I imagine like most do, a master switch. That's once it's flipped, but it can't be, it has to be unlocked by a code that he and I think 2 others in the SROs know. But if you flip it, every door within the outside of the building automatically locks. Now, our high school's a little older, so we don't have electronic locks on all of the doors inside the building. All of those are still old mechanical locks. So as a practice, you have to have the outside of your door constantly locked at all times. And I've seen people get in trouble for that. Like if the door's not, like if you shut your door and your door's not locked, people get in trouble for that. Or the SROs will come by and kind of like lock your door. Um, that's sort of the responsibility of the administrator. I've seen he is retired now, but I saw Mr. Edelman walk by routinely. He just checked doorknobs, and if something was wrong, he'd wave a hand and lock the door, and move along. It is ultimately the principal's job to provide the safest possible environment. You don't want to be the principal of a Columbine or a Parkland. You just don't. Um, and in our case, because of the industry that's emerging around us, I think we're also in a unique place for having to put plans in place. And those are things that principals have probably never thought of, which is sort of amazing. Thank you for the time.